Pretty interesting update happened today with the Apex Legend ALGS Pro Series hacking situation that happened this past Sunday, where Destroyer 2009 claimed an attack on both Jen Burton and ImperialHal, where he enabled cheats mid-tournament, mid-stream for all of us to see. The hacks that were enabled or cheats that were enabled were aimbot and wall hacks, as we all confirmed from the videos. Other than that, we don't know about any other cheats that were enabled, just those ones. Today, ImperialHal had a conversation with PirateSoftware, aka THOR, and they discussed what happened when the hacks took place during the LGS Pro Series. They confirmed that the hacker had some access to Hal's PC directly, but not on Jen's PC. They believe it was from a Trojan or some type of other attack, but it does not rule out the fact that this could still be Apex being compromised, and it does not rule out a remote code execution attack through Apex Legends. It is to note that Apex Legends, Respawn, and EA have not made any statements about this, and the only statement being made was from Easy Anti-Cheat saying they don't suspect an REC or an RCE on their side of their servers or their systems. Thor has also confirmed in these clips that he is not ruling out any of these attacks. So to feel safe, if you don't feel safe about Apex, uninstall the game or simply don't play the game at all. Here are some of the clips, and here is the conversation with ImperialHal and Thor. Enjoy.
Freaking out. They thought I already called you.
Yeah, I know. I was confusing myself too because I thought you wanted to talk, and then apparently they were telling you that I wanted to talk, and there's this. Yeah.
I think both of our communities have baited us into talking to each other. Is effectively what happened here. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's what the people want. I don't know.
Which is fine. Yeah. So like, for those of you in your community, I've been in the industry for about 20 years. I used to work at Blizzard Entertainment. I was actually senior red team specialist there, so offensive security. I'm a hacker. My last job was working for the federal government. I hacked power plants for the federal government, and then I also have 3 black badges from DEF CON, which is a hacking convention in Vegas every year. So this is like my whole wheelhouse, right? I've banned about 2 million players over my career. Like this is what I do. So the last 7 years now, I've been a streamer. I've been streaming and making video games and doing this kind of stuff. So now we're in this weird position where this thing happened, and I'm like the subject matter expert on the thing. So we're all talking about it and trying to find out what's going on. But I did a breakdown of what happened to you guys on stream the other day, and seeing that your machine had downloaded and run a cheat tool automatically in the middle of the game. And it's very clear that you didn't want that to happen because his text was in chat. The thing that was most interesting to me is if that guy hadn't put that in chat, there'd be no way that you could defend yourself.
Yeah.
No one would believe it, right? So I'm actually glad that the attacker did that, where he put his text in chat, because that saved you guys a huge amount of trouble. But with this,
I was gonna say, well, for some reason, when he did to me, he never put any. So the main difference is that that's what happened to Jen Burton. So the first thing that happened is you watched 2 different clips, right? So with the whole like the text and like the display with like the cheats or whatever, or the checkboxes, that was with Jen Burton, and for some reason on my POV, he never typed in my chat or like in the in-game chat, and he never showed that like box of like checklists or whatever, like of cheats. Like it was just like I was literally just randomly granted like aimbot out of nowhere. Like there's nothing popped up on my screen. There was like compared to Jen Burton's POV. So that was like I don't know if that means anything, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that is really interesting. So here's something that I'm interested on this too. When that all occurred, right?
Yeah.
And those started going through, did you see Jen Burton's actual texts going through, where it was advertising the hacker? Did that go into the lobby, or
no.
was that client side?
That was so like in-game chat, unless you're like an admin of the lobby, it's not it's not universal to the lobby, like the messages that you type. So like those messages that he was typing was only shown to his team. Only his team could see it.
Do we know if it actually went to the rest of his team or just to him?
It was the rest of his team, yeah.
Okay, so they had hooked the ability to do chat at that point. So in order to do that, they'd have to have access to the client memory or client functions, which would mean an injection into the client to do that, in order for that to send text like that. So that's interesting. The other thing from there is you did a virus scan afterwards, right? You used malware bytes?
Yeah,
I saw a clip of that.
Yeah, I used Malwarebytes and Windows like this virus scan, and there was nothing. I didn't do a full like PC scan, but I
Mhm.
didn't. I just scanned and I didn't find anything. I did
Okay,
replace my PC entirely with another one, so I haven't touched the other
I'm
one.
not surprised. Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. Do you still have that PC where
Yeah,
you can run scans on it and everything?
yeah,
I would be interested in seeing you run Malwarebytes again, but instead of doing like a quick scan, did you do a deep scan on it for like scan for rootkits and everything like that? Because there's a
no,
bunch of
just a
toggle
quick
options.
scan.
I would do that. I would like keep that thing off the network for sure, but like turn it on and
Yeah,
run a deep scan on it and do the advanced options because there's an advanced options menu. You just check all the boxes and you're good to go. It's like two
okay,
seconds. Because like if we can prove the difference between your machine being compromised directly, which could be possible, or the game being compromised. That's the big thing that has to be proven right now. And everyone's making a claim saying like, "Oh, the game is compromised. It's RCE. The easy anti-cheat is compromised. RCE." There's no proof of it.
yeah,
When we're dealing with security, we have to prove these types of vulnerabilities before we jump the gun and start making claims. And there's a ton of people just making wild claims right now. And the only one who can really prove that at that point is like you and Jen Burton
yeah,
is were your machines compromised? If your machines aren't compromised, if we have no evidence of compromise on those machines, which this doesn't fully prove it, but it kind of tilts it in the direction where your machines weren't directly compromised, then we have to keep digging. And it's
yeah.
one of those things to like find out, is the client actually vulnerable? Is the server vulnerable? Is easy anti-cheat vulnerable? There's a lot of stuff that has to be proven. And I hate all the wild claims. I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, I think, well, from my perspective, I can't really tell if my computer is compromised, just
Hmm.
because I feel like I think he's able to. He just decides not to. Like he wants to get like, I think his whole message is because he's been doing this for a while. Like to give you context, it's like I ran into this guy. His name is like in game two, Destroyer 2009 or whatever. Like you've seen the bot clip and stuff like that. Um,
Hmm.
he's been like terrorizing ranked like for a while now, like just messing
Oh
with
yeah.
ranked. Like he would just go into the lobby and he's like literally unbannable, and he would do this like there was another thing because he was unbannable he would do what is the word, basically he would be displayed as a console player but he was on PC. He was like I think he was using like an emulator, I think that's what it was called, so he was like
Okay.
practically like unbannable, which is why he would just stream snipe me and just like kill me every single game and stuff like that. But like he was literally just like untouchable in game. Like he was nobody would able to ban him or anything like that because he was using like an
Yeah.
emulator.
I also saw the video where he was spawning in a number of bots, and those bots were like kind of running after players automatically. It was like 40 plus bots
Yeah,
jumping in.
yeah,
This makes me worry of one thing is access to the server in some capacity. So when you're dealing server side cheats like that, I also saw that he was able to generate about 4,000 packs in the game and hand them to another player.
yeah. He
So
handed
I was
that.
talking to
Yeah, he handed that
Mandy.
to Mandy, me,
Yep.
and Jen Burton, and another
Yeah.
person called his Watson. He handed me like 2,500 packs.
Yeah, he handed Mandy 4,000. So like I talked to Mandy the other day about this yesterday. We got a video out for that and was talking about it because if he's able to generate packs automatically, it's either going to be stolen credit cards, which is totally possible, right? They can do
Yeah.
that kind of stuff unless are those purchasable in game by chance?
The packs.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could buy them. You can also gift them. Like you can, as a player, like a regular, like a casual, you can gift packs. I'm pretty sure to other people.
Okay. So at that point, it's like it could be stolen credit cards, buying a shitload of packs. That's possible. It could be based on the other types of exploitations he has. I'm worried that he has a client that is sending information up to the server and the server's accepting it, or he has direct access to the server. It seems unlikely that he has direct access to the server, like
Well, he can
remote
crash the
code execution
server.
access.
He can
He
also.
could.
Yeah, he was crashing the server.
Crashing the server is one thing. Getting
Yeah,
direct full access to the server, like administrator access to the server, is totally different.
yeah,
When we have a client to a server, right? So we've got a client and the client connects up to the server. It sends packets back and forth. So the client will send a packet, the server will send packets back. If the client sends up a packet that is malformed in some way and says, hey, I'm actually a console player now. If the server just accepts that without checking to see if it's true first, these types of things can be done. If you send a bunch of stuff up to the server and say, I'm actually 40 accounts now, spawning all these dudes, and the server just accepts it, then you get these types of problems. So it could be that he has a modified hack client that can do these types of things, and the server's just allowing for it, which is kind of bad testing. You get rid of that with fuzzing testing generally, where you check all the inputs and make sure that the client is a dummy, not able to run the server, if that makes sense. Not able to inform the server what to do. Just it's a dummy that displays things. Or he has direct server access, which is scarier, right? And we can't really tell the difference between those two things, but it's very clear he's instructing the server in some way with these types of exploits. And that's spooky. So that's one we can't really solve until we find out exactly how this is being done.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't know. Like you could probably name anything. He's probably done it. Like he can crash the server on his own will. He can. I don't even think he has to be in the game. Oh, maybe I think he actually has to be in the game to do that.
So he has to be in the game. That's interesting.
Yeah, it seems like he has to be in the same lobby as you to crash the server. I don't think he had. Like if he isn't, then he can't. But so there's been cases where he's in the lobby and he crashes the server, but then there's also been recently where my game, like the server crashes, obviously due to somebody doing it. Like it's not just like Apex server just crashing out of nowhere. Someone's deliberately crashing my server within like the first minute or two of like playing the game. And
do you know who's in the game when that happens?
No, I have no idea. I don't know like if he's in my lobby because he's not like chasing me or anything. Like he's not trying to kill me. He's just like deliberately like trying to just crash my game before I even get to play, right?
Yeah.
So I have no idea if he's actually in the lobby or not. But I know in the past when he was doing it, he was in the lobby. So
yeah, that lends credence more to the client. Like if he has to be in game, then it lends more credence to a hacked client that is able to inform the server on what to do. Which this could be fixable then. Like they could find out what's going on by looking at server logs and trying to stuff. And I guarantee the security team is already doing that. I guarantee they're already digging through all of that shit to try and find a way to do this. 100%.
Well, yeah. They've been disabled. Yeah. They disabled my account and my teammates. For some reason, they disabled my teammate's account too, even though he didn't get hacked. So, but yeah, my accounts have been disabled since they've been like just investigating it. So that's been like the
have they reached out to you guys? Are they at least talking to you guys about it? Of like, hey,
yeah, I was told I was supposed to get unbanned yesterday morning, and then obviously that I didn't expect that to happen, and so they needed more time. So, but yeah, they've been just like still working on it.
I'm glad they're talking to you guys about it though, because likely what they're doing there is they're looking through all the logs. They're looking through absolutely everything that was going on. They're trying to determine the cause of this, because if they can figure it out with it being this egregious, they can turn this around. And the fact that they've got your account shut down, that sucks, but it is definitely for the best to determine the cause of the vulnerability.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's so many different types of ways that this can be done. That's why I'm like trying to investigate all of this, because my big thing throughout the industry was like pattern recognition to determine the cause of exploitation, or to determine ways of finding ways to catch people doing this, right? Yeah. Find ways to catch botters, find ways to catch cheaters using manual methods and heuristics. So when I get this kind of information, it's like, oh, he's likely to be in game. He's more often in game when it happens than when he's not. That means he probably had a client to server cheat in some way, where the client was informing the server, and maybe evolved it over time where he's like, well, I don't want to be in game anymore. That's a hassle. I need to be able to get this server instance remotely and then shut that down remotely. And he evolved his tool set, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There was another, I don't know if I should say this, but like there was another time. So there's a thing called.
Don't put yourself in any bad position if you're not allowed to talk about something. Yeah.
It should be fine. I think it's like pretty worth it to like speak about it, because this is probably going to help you. Like there, when he was crashing my server without me knowing if he's not in my lobby or not. I had performance display on, which is like an option in the game where it displays your like FPS, your packet loss, your ping and stuff like that. But it also, I don't know if it displays the server ID or something like it displays something that's related to the server. And as soon as I like turn it off, he was not able to do that anymore, because I guess he didn't obtain information off that performance display to like crash the server. Or unless EA or something, they like patched something, right, in the back end while that was going on and stopped it, because it stopped happening after I turned that off. So
the server is just, I know that. Look, this chat saw me get all excited about it. He's getting the server ID through your client that way, if it's actually displaying that server ID, which is allowing him to target the actual server. There's likely going to be a command somewhere that is a packet that is being sent up to the server that's allowing him to do these modifications. With that in mind, when he jumps into the game, his client gives him the server ID. So he's targeting your server instance based on that ID that's inside of your menu. the one
Yeah.
that you disabled. That makes absolute sense. That's 100% it. So for him to be able to do things, he has to pull some information, either from a streamer that is displaying that information for the particular lobby that they're in, or with his own character that is in
Yeah.
that lobby as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. Yeah, this lends more and more to him not having direct access to the server. It seems incredibly unlikely that he has direct access to the server now. It seems way more likely that it's a client that is telling the server what to do, because he needs that information. There's a little bit of fog of war where he has to do a little bit of footwork to find the target correctly.
Yeah.
Obfuscating server ID, would that help? I would want to know what command, if they can figure out what command is being sent, where it is including that, they can kill this. If that is the only way of getting through for it. It is, you'll find very often that many issues like this start with a single seed vulnerability, like one thing that is wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And they just find newer and weirder ways to use that vulnerability to gain extra powers, slowly gaining a foothold with this. So with him having that one thing, we have a common goal here, which is get the server ID before I can do exploits. And if he can get the server ID and then do exploitation after that, that's a really interesting failure in terms of what happens if you obfuscate that from the client. What happens if you stop showing that to the player? What happens if the client is unable to pull the server ID because it's stored fully server-side? If they do that, and that dude's entire cheat suite is based on him getting the server ID, he loses. It's always about finding a novel way of shutting down the attacker.
But
that seems like a good route. That seems like a possible route.
Don't you agree though that the whole scenario that happened during the tournament is way different than like what he does during ranked?
I agree. Yes, I super agree. That being said, I am worried about in regards to not RCE yet, because RCE is a very serious thing, and for him to get RCE on your client, he would need to get RCE to the server, execute code on the server to pass down to get another RCE vulnerability on your client. Chain vulnerabilities like that do exist. They're insanely tricky to pull off. There also is no guarantee that the client and the server are vulnerable in a way that would be allowed, if that makes sense. So that's why I was like, well, Occam's razor on this a little bit. It is more likely that the end user's machine, so yours and the other machine, are compromised directly.
Yeah.
Which is why I was looking down that route. It's like if we can prove direct compromise on the machine, then that is more likely. It doesn't mean that it's not impossible to get RCE in that way. It just means it's less likely, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There was also, to give you even more context, like during the day of like the tournament, so there was two things that happened, and it was kind of like it was out of the ordinary, so that's why I'm bringing it up, and I don't know if it means anything.
Sure.
So like the very first thing that happened that was like kind of random. I don't remember exactly when it happened. Like I'd have to watch my VOD. I don't know if it was before the tournament started or after one of the games. It might have been after the second game, but there was a time where I was just sitting in the lobby waiting for the game to start, like the next game for the tournament, and my screen like went black. But it was like my whole screen went black, and there was like an Apex loading logo on the bottom right, and then my screen went back to normal, back to like the lobby where I was. And I don't know if that's like where he just like went into my account, entered my account at that time, which is why my screen went black, because that's never happened before. And I don't know if that means anything.
Could be with the client, because in the case of what was being displayed in game, your client had to be injected. It could be the game client reacting to the injection happening right then. Yeah, he was likely in the client from that moment on. If that's not something that you normally see with the game,
yeah,
and that's something that's never happened before, yeah, that could make sense. That could make sense as the moment of intrusion, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And the second thing that happened, I don't know if I was just like tripping, like I was asking Jen Burn if this happened to him, but I remember like when I did get like the aimbot, when I would like ADS or like look at something, like there was times where my screen looked off. I don't know, it looked like as if like my screen was being mirrored in a way, maybe, or like I don't know how to describe it. Like you would have to be like in person to see my screen, but it was like, yeah, maybe it might have been my FOV change. I don't think it was, but it just like my screen like looked different, like as if I was like I knew it was gonna happen, like in my head. like before I shot my gun. I don't know how to describe it, but I don't know if that is normal or not. But definitely my screen has something like changed, like I don't know if it was texture or a mirror effect from the like him cloning his PC or something. I have no idea. I'm just like
Would
talking
you
my
say
ass.
that it's like, you'll have to describe the effect to me a little bit. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to understand. Would you mean that like the resolution changed in some way, or do you think that maybe there was a slight delay on actions?
No, there was no delay. The resolution was still the same. It was just like I don't know. Maybe there was like maybe like a little bit of distortion of like where I was like aiming at, if that makes any sense, like visually. But
Like the aim was like weird. Is what
yeah,
you mean?
yeah, like
Okay.
it just looked weird. Like before I even shot, in my head it registered. Oh shit! Like, that's what like went through my head. But
No, I mean it makes sense. Like there's when you play a game as much as you guys do at the pro level, man, like anything that feels off with the client, it's gonna not make sense to a lot of us because we
yeah,
don't play the game that much. But any minutia that is like a tenth of a percent off that feels wrong, they're like, no, the game's wrong. Something's wrong.
yeah,
And
exactly.
it makes sense. You guys spend thousands of hours in that game, tens of thousands of hours.
Yeah, I have like almost 11,000 hours. So like as soon as I saw
Yep.
something like off or like just like even 1% of the time, I could tell. So
Yep. So
yeah,
yeah, that totally makes sense. It's gonna be weird because like anybody else is gonna be like, what are you talking about? That
yeah,
doesn't make any
exactly.
sense. But dude, when somebody plays a game this much, when they've played in that game for 11,000 hours, anything off, they're like, no, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Like something is wrong, and people are like, what are you talking about? It looks the same. No, and they
yeah.
they know because they've spent that long in the game.
Another thing to add, Jen Burns like DM'ing me, which is the other guy that like got hacked. He said that he like did like a full root scan and full scan, and he did not find anything on his PC.
So as much as I want that to clear up the idea that it was a compromised machine, attackers can clean up after themselves.
Yeah.
While the attack was going on, how long was it before you guys turned off your machines?
Um, well, for me personally, uh, like maybe I don't know. I would have to watch because I stayed on for at
Like
least
hours?
2, 3 hours maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. The only way that you would have been able to stop him from cleaning up after himself at that point, it would be plug pull immediately. Just like,
Yeah.
whoop, no more connection, no more, you can't do shit. Yeah. Unfortunately, I wish, God, it's like a crime scene, right? It's like a tampered crime scene at that point.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know if he had direct access through the game client, or it's hard to know if he had direct access through a compromise on your guys' machine. Damn. Well, yeah, deleting files after it's pretty normal. So cleanup kind of stuff is pretty normal in terms of infections like that. You'd be amazed at how often that happens, even inside of corporate environments where like companies get knocked over by nation states pretty commonly, and then they clean up after themselves afterwards. It's generally just seen as training most of the time. So you'll get all these people that enter a network, they just cause a mess, and then like 30 minutes later, with all these alarms going off, they ghost, they disappear. All the logs are gone. It's like they were never there. And it's
Yeah.
because their lead showed up and then showed them how to disappear. And it's training. We see it all the time inside of companies. The companies get knocked over constantly. So, like, even a basic understanding of how to clean up would be easy to do there. And it'd be really hard to detect afterwards, which sucks.
Yeah.
I don't know what the level of skill of the attacker is, but if he's been doing this for a long enough time, he probably has some skills behind him, which is good, right? So he's got that. He's just using it for shitty reasons.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like being part of the hacking community for long as I have, right? Most of the people from our community, we just want to solve a puzzle. And some people, especially younger people, don't really care about the implications of that for the people that are in the path, right?
Hmm.
This is a dude just solving a puzzle. He wants to see what he can do with it. He doesn't really care what anyone else feels about it.
Yeah.
It's pretty normal. It's awful. It's sad because someone that's that willing to solve the puzzle, that willing to go and dig into tech like this, would be a force for good inside of the industry. He could find amazing shit. He could fix amazing shit. And instead it goes this route, which sucks, you know.
Yeah.
Does APEC have unique vulnerabilities? Don't know. What we're trying to determine at this point is what is the scope of the vulnerability, right? Is the client vulnerable? If so, how? If the client is vulnerable, we should be able to reproduce it. If the client is not vulnerable, then how did they get in these two players' machines? If Easy Anti-Cheat is vulnerable, why didn't he use this on more machines? What is the scope, right? And anytime you have vulnerabilities like this is the normal investigation process. You talk to everybody involved, you find out every piece of information you can, you put together all that information, and then you put together likely scenarios and you go, well, let's investigate each of these likely scenarios. Hacking and conflict resolution stuff like this for hacking, for like you're trying to find out, what happened when this goes on. It's a shitload of research, man, and you go down every rabbit hole possible because you need to prove before you make a statement. And there's too many people on the internet making statements before proving. So.
Well, everyone's a programmer or like a hacker as soon as things happen, so bro. That's just
I read it on Reddit, so I know. It's ridiculous.
It's typical.
Yep. But anyway, yeah, no, this is really useful information actually. So I think for me, the biggest thing that I got out of this, man, the server ID thing.
Yeah.
That is so important. That is so important, and I'm sure that they know. I'm sure that the security team knows. But for the general community, this makes more sense. If he can use if he can find out the server ID that you're on, and he can only execute attacks if he knows your server ID, then that makes more sense that it's just a modified client and the server listening to it. Well, it is much less likely that he has access to the server.
Well, another thing is that like a while ago, like this is before Destroyer 2009's like existence, was a thing. There was like a long time ago in Apex where people like lobbies would get DDoS. Like this is what we would call it. Like not the server just straight up crashing, but basically the lobbies would be so overloaded to the point where the server would cause the crash, but it would take a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And we would do all of these things where it turn off our display, and stuff like that, and it still would happen. So I don't know if that like it means anything, or DDoSing and like crashing the server is two different things. But
so DDoSing is a completely different thing. The way the denial service works is you're connected to the game server. Game server is just like any other computer. It has an IP address, right? And you know what that IP address is, or the range of IP addresses that are available for certain types of servers in the instances. Hitting that with a whole bunch of traffic that looks like normal people is going to blow up the server. Yeah. In denial of service, the defender always loses. And that's a shitty thing to think about. But unless the defender has more hardware in place, they lose. And it's because the attacker can be faster. They can be leaner. When you are sending an attack, you're just saying, hey, I want to connect to your server. And the server has to take that down and go, are you allowed to connect to my server? Are you from an IP that I have blocked? Is this an okay connection to do? It has to make so many more choices on the defense side that the attacker always wins, because the attacker can use less processing power to destroy the defender, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's just you always lose with DDoS. The only thing you can do is just have bigger infrastructure. So when we deal with things like Cloudflare, they just have massive infrastructure and be like, we're going to put this huge infrastructure in the way. And even Cloudflare has fallen over before. Half the internet went down with them when it happened, dude. It was wild. So like, you'll see some wild stuff like that in terms of denial of service. But yeah, with denial of service, they just need to know the address of the server, which is trivial when your game client is connecting to the servers, right? Yeah. Same thing happens for World of Warcraft. Same thing happens for that. And back in the day, if you remember Lizard Squad, right? You remember that?
Yeah, I remember
They brought down WoW's server all the time.
Yeah.
That was using low orbit ion cannon, which is like, actually in that case, I think they were actually using Lizard Stressor. That's what it was. So theirs was using Lizard Stressor, which was like low orbit ion cannon, which is a DDoS service where you can actually get a whole bunch of bots that just go and try and DDoS one target. And the IP addresses for WoW servers were public, so you just nuke them. That was it. It was just pointed at this. It's like having a gun. You just point it at it. All these devices try to go connect to the server and it just blows up. Normal stuff. So yeah, that's a totally different attack and much easier to pull off. What he's doing is a little bit more sophisticated, but requires this critical piece of information, the server ID. That makes this more interesting, and it gets us closer to understanding what causes the vulnerability, and closer to understanding what could be done to stop it. Right? And I'm sure if the security team didn't already know this, which they could, this is going to be helpful for them to know. And it's helpful for the community because it gives them context, makes them feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I hope you don't feel super bad. I know it's probably really stressful.
Well, it's just been like a pain to like try to stream because I haven't had my account. But I figured it out now. But other than that, like I'm not. In my eyes, like you said earlier, I feel like this guy is, what he knows what he's doing to a degree.
Oh yeah.
It's more sophisticated than the usual hacks. So I feel like people are like, blowing it up, but they can hack into your keylog you, etc. And I'm just like, if he wanted to do that, he would have done it by now, right? So like I'm still taking precautions and stuff like that, but I don't think I really feel like his message is just to exploit how bad Apex's security, or I guess anti-cheat, is. and he
Yes.
just wants to exploit that as much as possible.
Yeah, there are some people that gain like kind of positive feelings out of that. They choose a target and they run with it, right? His whole thing right now is he wants to focus on Apex.
Yeah.
Whatever that, for whatever reason. Whatever internal reason mechanism is for that. For me, it's easy to get in, like, it's easy to kind of get ahead of yourself and be like, I'm going to get inside this guy's head to determine why. It's not really about why. It's about what, right? So like when you find out what the dude is doing, like how he's doing this,
Yeah.
the big how, you don't have to convince him to change, because that's a choice he's making. And it's a choice that he doesn't care about the morality of it. He doesn't give a shit. He just wants to solve the puzzle. It's a drive.
Yeah.
I feel the same thing when I'm doing that kind of stuff, but I do it in scope when I'm hired to do it, right?
Yeah.
I love solving the puzzle when I'm hired to solve the puzzle. It's like being a bloodhound, right? You go
Well,
after
it gives you like a sense of power solving it.
it feels awesome, and you're like,
Yeah.
I solved the puzzle, feels good, and you're like, cool, you were paid to do it. But this guy's solving the puzzle in a way that's detrimental to others, and it's clear he doesn't care, right? So like, I get it. The thing that's kind of rough about this one is the way that he's doing it is he's gone from kind of just cheating in games to getting more and more of this, and now he's trying to cause as much public damage as possible. But there's no rhyme or reason as to why. Normally, an attacker would release his methods at some point, right? And be like, this is how I'm doing this. Go fix this. It's not doing that. It's keeping it private. So they have to do an investigation to figure it out, and that's rough. And for those out there who think like, oh, Respawn's doing a shitty job, or like Apex is bad, or the security team is awful, whatever the hell it is, right? You have to understand that they can't communicate any of this stuff. They can't. Because if they communicate these types of things, there's a couple of things that happen. They open themselves up to legal liability, to financial liability, depending on what's going on. And then on top of it, they tip their hand to the attacker. All of that stuff is bad. You don't want to do that. It's fog of war, right?
Yeah.
With that in mind, they can't talk about this stuff. More often than not, they can't say shit. So the best thing you can do, cheer those devs on. You may feel like they're not doing enough, but they can't tell you everything that they're doing. So if you can cheer them on and say, hey, this sucks. What can I do to help? What kind of information can we give you? How can we report this stuff? The more that you can be their echelon, their giant system of radars and information, the better they can fix this stuff. That's all you can do at this point,
Yeah, exactly.
My chat is full of spiders. God damn it. Chat, why? Oh, they're all spiders now. Apex situation is scary. It's only scary because we don't know, right? And for me, I'm excited about it because I'm like, I don't know how he did this. And the moment you said server ID, so excited, because it's like we're getting a little bit closer to figuring this out. And I think the community is going to feel a lot better overall the more information that we can find out and determine for the methods. And my hope is that at the end of this trail, we find what's called a proof of concept, which is, this is how the vulnerability is done, this is how the company fixed it, and this is how it's not going to happen again in the future. Full disclosure on that kind of stuff would be great. I don't know if they'll ever do that. I don't know if we'll ever get that, but that would be my hope.
They probably
Yeah.
won't.
One moment. What is this?
Oh, people are. I don't know if you're busy, but someone actually brought up a good point. So majority of the competitors, they're all like forced, if you're streaming, to stream on a 10-minute delay, right? And it's actually perfect timing. It actually makes a lot of sense too. Coincidentally, I don't know. I haven't checked the timestamp of server ID and 10-minute delay, but what if there might be a coincidence of him injecting these hacks once the 10-minute delay catches up?
Wait, say that again?
So, I just explained that like pretty bad, but basically like he can only see the server ID as soon as we're in the game, right? Like,
yes.
The performance display. But the thing is that everyone that is streaming has 10-minute delay on. So
yes,
when it actually happened on stream was when he finally got the server ID, 10 minutes into the game, which would make sense on he actually needs the server ID or the performance display to inject these hacks. Because
that's exactly what it is.
Because both times when it happened to me and Jen Burton, it was like, I don't know the timestamp, like I said. Okay. It might have been like 10 minutes later into the game. I'm not sure, but it might have been before 10 minutes later or 10 minutes before. I'm not sure, but I would have to look at the timestamp. But it might have. Let me see. Yeah, they were saying Jen was on round 4, mine was round 2. So when it happened to me, it was earlier into the game. So maybe it was because I don't know if that was because it was the same code, but yeah, that might not be like the right theory, but because the first time it happened, it was later into the game, so maybe it caught up the delay and then it happened. But for me, it happened earlier, so it might not be true. With the
I mean,
performance
I think
display
that's
thing.
really interesting because if the timing lines up, it again, server ID seems the most likely. Server ID absolutely seems the most likely for this. It looks like also, I was sent an image just now. So this happened on Hal's screen after he made him install Malwarebytes 30 to 120 minutes after the incident. Where when you ran Malwarebytes, did it say, because there showed me an image, I want to confirm this. Did it say that there was an inbound connection with an IP address
Yeah, someone showed me
over
that.
port 135?
Yeah, I didn't see that when I was like streaming or doing that. Like I never saw that, but people were telling me that like, hey, your IP got leaked, blah 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 blah. I never saw it, so I didn't watch on VOD and see if that actually happened. But
So they've got a
yeah.
screenshot here for me, and I'm not going to show it on stream,
Yeah.
obviously, because I don't know if it's your IP address. It looks like it's actually the attacker's jump box.
Yeah, it might be.
It is. I wouldn't show that anywhere. But is that not your IP at the end of that URL there?
Let me see. How would I check that?
I would go to Google and say, "What's my IP?"
All right. So, listen, I'm a noob. You're the professional here.
Yeah.
That is not mine.
Okay. I'm not surprised. So the reason why this is interesting is that IP address, if you run it through VirusTotal, is actually showing that it's running as malicious. There's a shitload of malicious hits on that. And that screenshot shows that there was an inbound connection to your computer from that IP address over port 135 on your stream. There's a screenshot for it.
Yeah.
I think this dude had direct access to your machine. I don't think it's RCE. With this evidence right here, I think there was direct access to your machine.
Yeah, on the link you posted, do I have to click on that, or is it just a number at the end of the link?
You can just click on it. Yeah, you can click on it to pull this up to see exactly what that is. Yep. So I'm going to pull this up now because we can confirm that this is the case, right?
Hold on, give me 1 second.
Sure. Can we get a screenshot of this directly from the VOD instead of a cropped one, if you have that? Not you, the person who sent it to me. It's Furkan. Furkan sent me this.
Yeah, this is definitely not mine.
Yeah, Furkan, can you send me that with the full screen so we can have it in full context? Thank you. Yeah.
Digital Ocean.
So that's Windows RPC. This is all starting to align, dude. This looks like direct access to the machine.
Well, how would he gain access directly to the machine?
Trojan would be the way. Whether through the client or through a download that you did, we don't know.
You think that he could have done it through the packs that he gifted us?
That I don't know. That would be another different method, right? So we've got an unknown here. How did he get it on your machine?
Yeah. So how was there a chance that his IP somehow just showed up on my screen?
So what that is Malwarebytes detected that there was an inbound connection from another IP address, from a server. This guy it's not his actual IP. It's likely what is called a jump box, which is if you look on, can you see my stream right now?
Let me pull it up.
Sure.
Yep, I see it.
So if this is your machine, we would expect the attacker's machine to directly interface with you, but that's not how this works. They generally have what's called a jump box in between, which is either another machine that has been compromised or a machine that they are renting in some way, usually using cryptocurrency in some way like that. Then the attacker has their machine out here. The attacker then connects to the jump box in some way, usually over a public line, so that they don't trace it back to their home address or their home ISP. If they're not a dumbass, if they are a dumbass, then they use their home ISP, and it becomes trivial to catch them once you start digging enough. Once the bloodhound is on your case, it just it starts to unravel. So that jump box that we can go and look at that is actually a DigitalOcean ASN. Let's go see who owns that machine, because that machine is connecting to your machine over port 135, and we have the IP address for that. Port 135 is Windows RPC, and it looks like it's been flagged by a number of security vendors. I'd like to know what that IP address is and who owns that. That's the big question right now. Who owns this? Let's go see. This is the kind of stuff that I do when we're doing like any type of investigation, by the way. Mm-hmm. It's my assumption it's a jump box. We got to find out.
About to crack the case on stream.
Yeah, it's fun. I love doing this stuff, man. Writing and peering policy can be found at... What is this? What is this weird service? Some weird stuff in here, dude. Yeah, so this is the kind of stuff that I love looking up, because you're like, who is this? What is this? IP2 location. It looks like it's actually in the United States. Provider is TunnelBear. Domain is digitalocean.com. Server for rent. Yeah, server for rent. 100%. Normal stuff. So likely this is a rented server from a dude that's using this for attacks. There's your attacker. There's his jump box. We have his jump box. So what they could do at this point is, now that we know the IP address that connected to your machine, they can now take that, go to DigitalOcean and say, hey, we have a box that connected to this player's machine at the time of this event, is a known attack one that shows up on VirusTotal. Who's paying for that box? You got your man. That's an option now. That wasn't an option at the beginning of this call, and now that's an option.
Yeah.
That's how this stuff happens. Really, really fast. Yep. Because somebody has to pay for the box, unless it's a compromised box, which it could be. Then you got to start over. You got to keep looking, right? So these are the types of things that you look for. Is you're like, oh, there's a loose thread here. Let's pull it until we unravel this sweater. This is a piece of a thread. Basically, you keep it in the back of the Batman belt, and you're like, I've got this. Let's see where that goes. I think this is really interesting, though. The fact that this actually showed up in your stream. Where is this? Firkin, were you able to get that full image? We'll take to find the VOD. I'll message in a bit. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to show you guys what this image was, just so you can get an understanding, because it's on the VOD. This is public information now.
Yeah.
But this is what showed up on your stream. And it said port 135, which is Windows RPC, IP address, which is going to be 107.170.2365, inbound, which means it's a connection to your machine from a known attack machine, specifically on there.
Yeah.
And that known attack machine is a rented machine on DigitalOcean. Like, that's basic smoking gun shit for me. I'd be like, oh, okay, so that's the attacker's machine. Because why else would you have an inbound connection there that Malwarebytes is keying on, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And that's not your IP, so...
But isn't this just like a temporary solution to like the issue? Or I guess like banning the guy through this?
It's not a temporary solution when you arrest the dude, right?
Well, I guess, yeah.
So you arrest the dude, you find out the methods. You find out the methods or arrest the dude. Either. Or both, frankly, right? There's always a way to go once you find out. You want to find out who's doing this. And this is an option. Unfortunately, it looks like he made a bit of a mistake. And because he made a bit of a mistake, you got a piece of information that could lead to finding out who he is and what he's doing. And that's very useful for the people on the defense side. Every time the attacker makes a misstep, every time they screw up like that, a little piece of that thread falls out of that sweater until you know exactly who they are. It is always about the enemy making too many mistakes. Every time. So, I'm interested in that. Wait and see. Wait and see where that goes.
That's interesting.
Waiting to see that full image so we can have it in full context.
I'm surprised that I think Jen Burn might have like fully wiped his PC, which is maybe why it didn't pop up on his screen. Because I don't think it never popped up on his screen ever. And I don't think,
could have been the moment you ran it. That means the connection was active at the time. The attacker can terminate that connection at any time. You may have just caught it while the connection was still active. You got lucky.
Yeah, and that was his mistake.
Yeah, it's his mistake.
Yeah.
All of this stuff, a lot of people don't realize is the attacks between offense and defense in scenarios like this, 100% of those are going to be a clever developer versus a clever developer. And it's basically like a standoff of who's going to screw up first, because someone's going to make a mistake. But the problem for the attacker side is they basically, in this case, he has to be perfect every time because he's actively attacking and he has to obfuscate who he is.
Yeah.
If he makes any mistake, like here, at any time, it can unravel the whole thing. So,
yeah, for sure.
Can you track his machine from the jump box? Depends. So, like, next steps that happen from there, right, is you've got trying to find out who owns the box, trying to find out who pays for the box. Is the box actually compromised? If he is accessing that box remotely, where is he accessing it from? Does that actually lead back to his home? Does that lead back to a country that has extradition rights to the United States? If it has extradition rights to the United States, do you extradite him? Can you? What is the age of the person? Is he under 18? Right? There's so many variables that spin out of that. But really what it comes down to is who owns that box? Why is that box connecting to this dude's machine? That's a lot of questions, right? So there had to be some way for him to direct what was going on in your machine. This was likely the way that he directed what was going on in your machine. Not through the game client, through this connection over port 135 from a known attack server. That is infinitely more likely. Because you have to puppeteer the machine. It's not just going to do it on its own. You puppeteer it from range. And he's puppeteering probably over that connection, if that makes sense.
So this clarifies more so that Apex is not, like, in danger. It's just more so, like, he just got access to my PC.
I don't see evidence of Apex having RCE. It does not mean that it's impossible, but I still don't see evidence, while I do see evidence of him having direct access to your machine, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it is still technically possible that Apex has RCE. I don't see evidence of it. I do see evidence of this. This is now provable with this.
Yeah.
What about the PAX? The PAX shows that he had access to telling the server to do things it shouldn't. That doesn't necessarily mean remote code execution. Servers do dumb shit all the time. Like, some of the stuff that I worked on in the past was attackers were able to change the price of certain games to 1 cent because the payment flow was not protected correctly. That doesn't mean that they have access to the, RCE on the server. It just means that the payment flow wasn't checking itself correctly. There's vulnerabilities all over the place. Weird ones, right? Dumb, but you have to figure out what the actual scope of the attacker's access really is. And if you assume and you just say, oh, this is what it is, then everybody loses. We have to prove it. It always has to be proven. Everything is very rigorous when you are doing this. You have to be very rigorous about how you are approaching these things. And you only mark things out and add things to the table based on what is provable information.
Jen Burton just stated in my chat that he did a full reinstall of Windows before the tournament started.
Full reinstall of Windows before the tournament started.
Yeah.
You could still have persistence on the machine, but that is more interesting. So how did the infection take place? Yeah, still leaves the window open for something being wrong with Apex. If he did full reinstall of Windows, there's ways to keep persistence through Windows installs. They're a lot more advanced. You could do it. If this guy's savvy enough, he could be doing that. There are, hardware level exploitation. There's ways of keeping persistence through that. There are ways of doing it. That being said, likelihood decreases slightly. Yeah. I mean, we still don't have RCE off the table for Apex. We won't until we prove the actual full way of doing this. So yeah, makes sense. In your case, we see that he had direct access to your machine. Now, the interesting part is we don't know where that access started. We don't know how the access started. So that does still leave open the possibility of something being wrong with Apex, though no proof. Still no proof. We have to wait. Yeah. We need more info. And we could get that. Just takes time. This is why when you see developers like, oh man, the developers aren't doing anything, they're doing this. You have to wait for the attacker to keep screwing up. You just keep picking at the thread. You keep pulling at the sweater. Little pieces here and there. You keep building it up into this big thing, and then you're like, now we got him. Right? That's why it takes a long time. It always does. Grove's playing Greyhack IRL. I mean, yeah, that's what do you think I do? I've been doing most of my career. Yeah, investigation takes time. It does. What's up? I'm not sure about how you get access to someone's computer through just having their IP. No, you don't get access to someone's computer through just having their IP. No. Seeing the server ID is important, right? If the attacker gets the server ID and can see the player's IP through it, can't they just get access to one of the players through their IP? No. Having someone's IP address is like having their home address. It doesn't mean they're going to open the door for you. You just know where the house is, right?
Yeah.
That's the same as having an IP address. You know where their machine is located. It doesn't mean you can get in, right? Yeah. They can DDoS you. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I find this to be interesting. I want to see where that's going. I want to see why that machine had connection to you, especially when it's a known. It's flagged 9 of 91 security vendors on there, and I find that to be a very interesting thing, especially from VirusTotal, right? I'm going to see what the relations to this are, the community details and everything.
Hold on. I was gonna ask you too. Do you think it's weird the fact that I was one of the 2 that got hacked, but I'm the only one still banned? Like, do you think that's just do you think that Destroyer 2009 is on that side? Do you think? I guess because we don't have any way of proving that. Like, I don't know. Like, EA is
worried that he's like an employee?
No, I'm more so worried that I feel like he somehow was able to disable my account, and EA is trying to fix it, but they can't. They told me that they're investigating my account, but wouldn't they wanted to disable Jen Burns' account too, investigate his account?
The level of access that was shown on your stream may have been higher. There may be something that they've learned from that, and they don't want it to be messed with, because you have to remember in the United States, access of another computer like that, illegal access of another computer, is a federal crime. So that is a federal crime scene that is happening there. Yeah. So by locking the player out of the account, they would likely be showing this to the FBI. That's very normal. Like, while I was at Blizzard, we did that all the time. Anytime major accesses like that happen, that's an FBI problem. It's funny because people don't realize that. That's what the FBI does. That's what the Federal Bureau of Investigation does. That's part of it. Computer crime is in their purview. Like, yeah, that's normal stuff. So when you're dealing with this kind of stuff, that is a possibility. And I don't know what investigation they're doing on their end, but it is likely they're trying to preserve the state of something while they're doing an investigation, and you accessing the account could mess up the state of that, right? Yeah. You have to think about it like a crime scene. Yeah. I don't know if that's the case, but having all the experience that I do, that is a possibility, and it seems likely to me. Because, yeah, you'd be like, oh, yeah, you can't access it. We're still doing an investigation.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be too worried about it.
Yeah.
Let me see. So I'm looking through the account accesses on this. There's a ton of people that have flagged this. Track attacks, spyware and viruses, known ransomware list.
Someone is telling me that the chat, like, spamming the reverse DNS of the IP shows not a jump box.
Shows not a jump box? You wouldn't be able to tell that. It doesn't work that way. A jump box just means that it's somebody's server that they're using to do attacks. And this is being flagged by VirusTotal as a source of a number of attacks for a very long period of time. Which means it is either a jump box from our attacker, or it is a compromised machine that is being used for attacks for lots of people, which is also possible. Both suck, you know. But yeah, it's all over the place on these. You see this kind of stuff all the time. You'd be pretty surprised. Yeah, this is flagged everywhere. There's like dozens of lists that are like, this server is bad. This server attacks things. It's like, it's even on the Mirai botnet IP block list. Like, it's everywhere. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all.
Is there a way you can send me that screenshot? Certain higher ups are like asking for it.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, if they didn't already have this is the kind of stuff, this is why we talk about these things, to make sure that this stuff comes to light, because it's going to help the devs, man. If they didn't already have this, it'll help them. Because that's very useful, incredibly so.
Thank you.
And you can give them this as well, which is the VirusTotal check for that.
Okay.
Sorry, IP2 location on that one, so they know where it is, and then VirusTotal check for that as well, which is super useful, because now you can see why this thing is flagged, And you'll see it's actually flagged by a massive amount of people on the internet for different types of attacks. So again, the attacker likely had access to this, but is he the owner, or is it a compromised machine that's used by a lot of people? Either is possible. Still a loose thread, still a mistake on the part of the attacker. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's your consultation fee? No, I do this shit for free. I get paid in vitamins, dude. I love this. Oh, you got the pop-up image. Let me go grab this. So this is actually on your stream. Right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it popped up immediately while you were doing the scan.
Okay, that's how I didn't see it. I was looking at something like my chat, maybe, I think.
Yeah. You're probably, dude, I'll be honest with you, you're probably nervous as shit. I would be. After all that, that sucks.
No, I wasn't nervous because I know I was not at fault, so I was just, I don't know. I think it was just funny because everyone else was freaking out, personally. But,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally didn't, like, I know Jen got a little nervous because it looked kind of bad, like he was the first one to start with, obviously, but I knew what happened from Jen Burton, so it was like, I knew I was going to be next, most likely, because I was debating on stream, like, if it does happen to me, what am I going to do? And then I was like, I don't want them to keep the game going if I leave the game, so I'm just going to force their hand to have to restart the game, or, like, pause the game.
Yeah.
So I just went with it, but...
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, with this, people are saying it came up about 30 minutes after you do the scan. These generally won't show up with the scan. You were still running malware bytes. So it was monitoring the connections that were happening. It was like, wait a minute, there's an inbound connection from this. So it's something to check out. With this showing up on VirusTotal like this, with so many reports of this server, it's 100% something to look into. Especially with an inbound connection over 135. Like, what? It's a little bit weird.
Yeah, that was a big mistake by that guy.
No, Jen, tell us, don't touch that server. Don't do that. Don't be a dumbass. Remember when I said don't be a dumbass? Yeah, that's being a dumbass. Amazing, right? So, like, the way that this works is we just investigate, and then you hand it off to the police. You investigate, you say, hey, this is a loose thread, you hand it off to the police, and this builds a case. You figure out what's going on with that, right? A lot of it generally has to deal with fog of war, but I think in this case, the Apex community has a critical sort of need for information, because a lot of these people feel very lost. And most people in the industry don't know anything about security. Like most people who are players, they have no idea about security, and they just think that it's magic, and they usually think that security teams are lazy as shit. They're not. They're not lazy. They just do this stuff. And as you can see, it's taken hours to figure this out and be like, oh, wait a minute. There's a loose thread. And the only reason this loose thread even presented itself is because you happened to install malware bytes. You happened to be streaming, and this happened to pop up as an inbound connection 30 minutes later. That's how that shit happens. You get a lucky break. You know, you have to wait, and you get a lucky break.
So it says file. Is that so? He installs something on my PC that like he creates like a way to connect to my PC with that file, or was that file having?
No, in this case, this was managing the connection. That's a normal Windows file. So it's managing the port of 135 connection, whatever was going over that. We don't know what was being transmitted because you didn't have like Wireshark or anything like that kind of shit running. Yeah, it's a Windows process. That's all. Yeah, because if you go and look at port 135 uses, you can pull that up and say Windows RPC. Windows RPC allows for the display of pop-up messages, right? However, Windows RPC is also used in a number of exploit chains. I've seen that in the past, where it can be used for different types of things, where you could gain access or cause things to happen on the end machine. We see it all the time, especially with like ransomware shit. Super annoying. I'll have to talk to Gurn about it, because Gurn is the malware specialist out of the hacking team that I'm part of for DEF CON, and he knows way more about this subject than me in that regard, that realm of it. I'm investigation side. I love this shit. But when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of what the malware is actually doing, he's the god mode on that.
Yeah, I wonder what he would say about the screenshot. Probably say.
Yeah, I'm going to send it to him. I'm going to send this over to him right now. Be like, hey, Gurn, do you want a puzzle? Want a puzzle?